Welcome to day 2 of reading the Sai Satcharitra. I will now be starting with chapter 2. Object of writing the work: incapacity and boldness in the undertaking. Hot discussion conferring significant and prophetic title of Hemadpant and necessity of a guru. In the last chapter, the author mentioned in the original Marathi book that he would state the reason that led him to undertake the work and the persons qualified to read the same and other such points. Now, in this chapter, he starts to answer the same. Object of writing the work. In the first chapter, I described Sai Baba's miracle of checking and destroying the epidemic of cholera by grinding wheat and throwing it a flower outside the village. I heard other miracles of Sai Baba to my great delight, and this delight burst forth into this poetic work. I also thought that the description of these grand miracles of Sai Baba would be interesting and instructive to his devotees, and remove their sins, and so I began to write the sacred life and teachings of Sai Baba. The life of the saint is neither logical nor dialectical. It shows us the true and great path. Incapacity and boldness in undertaking the work. Hemadpant thought that he was not a fit person to undertake the work. He said, "I do not know the life of my intimate friend, nor do I know my own mind. Then how can I write the life of a saint, or describe the nature of incarnations, which even the Vedas are unable to do? One must be a saint himself before he could know other saints. Then how can I describe their glory? To write the life of a saint is most difficult, though one may as well measure the depth of the water of the seven seas, or enclose the sky with cloth trappings." I knew that this was a most venturous undertaking, which might expose me to ridicule. Therefore, I invoked Sai Baba's grace. The premier poet saint of Maharashtra, Shri Maharaj, had stated that the Lord loves those who write the lives of saints, and the saints also have a peculiar method of getting their own service, which the devotees long for, successfully accomplished. The saints inspire the work, the devotee becomes only an indirect cause or instrument to achieve the end. For instance, in 1700 Shakaya, the poet Mahipati aspired to write the lives of saints. Saints inspired him and got the work done. So also in 1800 Shakaya, Das Ganu's service was accepted. The former wrote 4 works: Bhakt Vijaya, Sant Vijaya, Bhakt Leelamrit and Sant Kathamrit, while the latter wrote 2, Bhakt Leelamrit and Sant Kathamrit, in which the lives of modern saints were described. In chapters 31, 32 and 33 of Bhakt Leelamrit and in chapter 57 of Sant Kathamrit, the sweet life and teachings of Sai Baba are very well depicted. These have been separately published in Sai Leela magazines number 11 and 12, volume 17. The readers are advised to read these chapters. So also Sai Baba's wonderful Leelas are described in a small decent book named Shri Sai Nath Bhajan Mala by Mrs. Savitri Bai Raghunath Dabholkar of Bandra. Das Ganu Maharaj also has composed various sweet poems on Sai Baba. A devotee named Amidas Bhavani Mehta has also published some stories of Sai Baba in Gujarati. Some numbers of Sainath Prabha, a magazine published by Dakshina Bhiksha Sanstha of Shirdi, are also published. Then the question of objection comes in, that while so many works regarding Sai Baba are extant, why should this Satcharita be needed? And where is the necessity? The answer is plain and simple. The life of Sai Baba is as wide and deep as the infinite ocean, and all can dive deep into the same and take out precious gems and distribute them to the aspiring public. The stories, parables, and teachings of Sai Baba are very wonderful. They will give peace and happiness to the people who are afflicted with sorrows and heavily loaded with miseries of this worldly existence, and also bestow knowledge and wisdom both in the worldly and the spiritual domains. If these teachings of Sai Baba, which are interesting and instructive as the Vedic lore, are listened to and meditated upon, the devotees will get what they long for, which is union with Brahman, mastery in eightfold yoga, bliss of meditation, etc. So I thought that I should call these stories together. That would be my best upasana. This collection would be most delightful to those simple souls whose eyes were not blessed by Sai Baba's darshan. So I set about collecting Sai Baba's teachings and expressions, the outcome of his boundless and natural self realization. It was Sai Baba who inspired me in this matter. In fact, I surrendered my ego at his feet and thought that my path was clear and that he would make me quite happy here and in the next world. I couldn't myself ask Sai Baba to give me permission for this work, so I asked Mr. Madhavrao Deshpande, alias Shama, Baba's most intimate devotee, to speak to him for me. He pleaded for my cause and said to Sai Baba, "This Anna Sahib wishes to write your biography. Don't say that you are a begging poor fakir and there is no necessity to write it. But if you agree and help him, he will write, or rather, your feet will accomplish the work. Without your consent and blessing, nothing can be done successfully." When Sai Baba heard this request, he was moved and blessed me by giving me his udi, his sacred ashes, and placed his boon bestowing hand on my head. He said, "Let him make a collection of stories and experiences. Keep notes and memos. I will help him. He is only an outward instrument. I should write myself my autobiography and satisfy the wishes of my devotees. He should get rid of his ego, place, and surrender it at my feet. He who acts like this in life, him I help the most. What of my life stories? I serve him in his house in all possible ways. When his ego is completely annihilated and there is no trace left of it, I myself shall enter into him and shall myself write my own life. Hearing my stories and teachings will create faith in devotees' hearts, and they will easily get self-realization and bliss. Let there be no insistence on establishing one's own view, no attempt to refute others' opinions, no discussions of pros and cons of any subjects." The word discussion put me in mind of my promise to explain the story of my getting the title Hemadpant, and now I begin to relate the same. I was on close friendly terms with Kaka Sahib Dikshit and Nana Sahib Chandorkar. They pressed me to go to Shirdi and have Baba's darshan, and I promised them to do so. But something in the interval turned up which prevented me from going to Shirdi. The son of a friend in Lonavla fell ill. My friend tried all possible means, physical and spiritual, but the fever would not abate. At length he got his guru to sit by the bedside of his son, but this too was of no avail. Hearing this, I thought, what is the utility of the guru if he could not save my friend's son? If the guru cannot do anything for us, why would I go to Shirdi at all? Thinking in this way, I postponed my Shirdi trip. But the inevitable must happen, and it happened in my case as follows. Mr. Nana Sahib Chandorkar, who was the Prant officer, was going to a tour of Basen. From Thana, he came to Dadar and was waiting for a train bound to Basen. In the meanwhile, a Bandra local turned up. He sat in it and came to Bandra and sent for me and took me to task for putting off my Shirdi trip. Nana's argument for my Shirdi trip was convincing and delightful, and so I decided to start for Shirdi the same night. Packed up my luggage and started for Shirdi. I planned to go to Dadar and there to catch the train for Manmand. And so I booked myself for Dadar and sat in the train. While the train was to start, a Mohammedan came hastily to my compartment and, seeing all my paraphernalia, asked me where I was bound. I told him my plan. He then suggested that I should go straight to Bori Bandar and not get down at Dadar, for the Manmad mail did not get down at Dadar at all. If this little Leela or miracle had not happened, I would not have reached Shirdi the next day, and many doubts would have assailed me. But that was not to be. As fortune favoured me, I reached Shirdi the next day before 9 or 10 a.m. Mr. Bhausab Dikshit was waiting for me there. This is 1910 AD, where there was only one place, which is Sathe's Vada, for lodging of pilgrim devotees. After alighting from the Tonga, I was anxious to have darshan when the great devotee Tatya Sahib returned from the masjid and said that Sai Baba was at the corner of the vada and that I should first get his preliminary darshan and then after bath see him at leisure. Hearing this, I ran and prostrated before Baba, and then my joy knew no bounds. I found more than what Nana Sahib had told me. All my senses were satisfied, and I forgot thirst and hunger. The moment I touched Sai Baba's feet, I began a new lease of life. I felt myself much obliged to those who spurred and helped me to get the darshan, and I considered them as my real relatives. And I cannot repay their debt. I only remember them and mentally prostrate before them. The peculiarity of Sai Baba's darshan as I found it is that by his darshan our thoughts are changed. The force of previous actions is abated and gradually non-attachment of dispassion towards worldly objects grows. It is by the merit of actions in many past births that such darshan is got. And if you only see Sai Baba, really all the world becomes or assumes the form of Sai Baba. Hot discussion. On the first day of my arrival in Shirdi, there was a discussion between me and Bala Sahib Bhate regarding the necessity of a guru. I contended, why should we lose our freedom and submit to others? When we have to do our duty, why is a guru a necessity? One must try his best and save himself. What can the guru do to a man who does nothing but sleeps indolently? Thus, I pleaded free will, while Mr. Bhate took up the other side, which is destiny. He said, whatever is bound to happen must happen. Even great men have failed. Man proposes one way, but God disposes the contrary. Brush aside your cleverness, pride, or egoism. They will not help you. This discussion, with all its pros and cons, went on for an hour or so, and as usual, no decision was arrived at. We had to stop the discussion ultimately as we were exhausted. The net result of this was I lost my peace of mind and found that unless there's a strong body consciousness and egoism, there would be no discussion. In other words, egoism breeds discussion. Then we went to the masjid with others. Baba asked Kaka Sahib the following. What was going on in Sathe's Wada? What was the discussion about? And staring at me, Baba further added, what did this Hemadpant say? I was much surprised. The masjid was at a considerable distance from the Wada where I was staying and where the discussion was going on. How could Baba know our discussion unless he was omniscient and the inner ruler of us all? The significant and prophetic title. I began to think why Sai Baba would call me by the name Hemadpant. The word is a corrupt form of Hemadpant. This Hemadpant was a well-known minister of the kings Mahadev and Ramadev of Devgiri of the Yadav dynasty. He was very learned, good-natured, and author of good works such as Chaturvarga Chintamani and Raja Prashasti. He invented and started new methods of accounts and was the originator of the Modi script. But I was quite the opposite. An ignoramus, I have a dull and mediocre intellect. So I could not understand why the name or title was conferred upon me. But seriously thinking upon it, I thought the title was a dart to destroy my ego, so that I should always remain meek and humble. It was also a compliment paid to me for the cleverness in the discussion. Looking to the future history, we think that Baba's word was significant and prophetic, as we find that he looked after the management of Sai Sansthan very intelligently, kept nicely all the accounts, and was the author of such a good work as Sai Satcharitra, which deals with such important and spiritual subjects as Gyan, Bhakti, dispassion, self-surrender, and self-realization. About the necessity of a guru. Hemadpant has left no note, no memo about what Baba said regarding this subject, but Kaka Sahib Dikshit has published his notes regarding this matter. Next day after Hemadpant's meeting with Sai Baba, Kaka Kaka Sahib went to Baba and asked whether he should leave Shirdi. Baba said yes. Then someone asked, Baba, where to go? Baba said, high up. The man said, how is the way? Baba said, there are many ways leading there. There is one way also from here, which is Shirdi. The way is difficult. There are tigers and wolves and jungles on the way. I asked, but Baba, what if we can take a guide with us? Baba answered, then there is no difficulty. The guide will take you straight to your destination, avoiding wolves, tigers, ditches, etc. on the way. If there be no guide, there is the danger of you being lost in the jungles or falling into ditches. Mr. Dabholkar was present on this occasion and he thought that this was the answer Baba gave to the question whether Guru was a necessity. And he thereupon took the hint that no discussion of the problem, whether man is free or bound or is of any spiritual use. On the contrary, real Paramath is possible only as the result of the teachings of the Guru, as illustrated in this chapter of the original work, in the instance of great avatars like Ram and Krishna, who had to submit themselves to their gurus Vashisht and Sandipani, respectively, for getting self realization, and that the only virtues necessary for such progress are faith and patience. With that, we come to the end of this chapter. Bow to Shri Sai, peace be to all. Om Sai Ram, Om Sai Ram, Om Sai Ram. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sadhai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivji Sada Sahai. Om Namah Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai.